Hello, welcome to Star Wars Spelt Out. I'm your host, Josh Chapman, and today, one of my favorite things, first time guest. We haven't had this guest on before, and oh man, this is a weird one. Let's just get her on. Chrysanthe from Star Wars Music Minute. How you going?
I'm going well. My hands are very cold. It's cold in Melbourne.
This is the crazy thing. We've
surviving.
got like international guest in the home city where we live. So it's this weird thing where it's just like, oh, well, you know, we have people from overseas on here all the time, but usually not when they're like a couple of kilometers down the road. So
yeah, we're capitalizing on the opportunity.
I know, it's too cold to go outside. I was like, oh, maybe you should just come around to the house and record. I'm like, no, it's too cold. Like, you know, we've met up a couple of times. You know, like, I'm not going around to some weirdo's house, like, just to record. Let's not do that. Let's just keep it online. And keep it civilized. But you've been like hanging out in Melbourne. Like, how's that going?
I have. I'm leaving tomorrow, so it's over soon.
Oh dear. Are you not going to miss the cold? It has been freezing, hasn't it?
It has been pretty cold, but honestly in LA it's been really hot. And I don't know, somewhere in the middle would be ideal, obviously. But it is kind of nice to have a slight break from the really hot summer as well.
Yeah, if you'd come in summer, it would have just been stinking hot as well. So,
yeah.
But at least you could have gone to the beach and stuff like that. Like, is anybody going, hey, do you want to go check out the beach?
I can't swim.
Oh, can't you swim?
No.
Really? Are you just like, I won't even put my feet in? Or you're like, oh, I'll go up to my ankles?
Like, I'll put my feet in, but I'm not a big beach person because I don't really like to get dirty.
You don't like sand? It's coarse and rough and gets everywhere.
I don't really like sand. I don't. But like, I also just don't like to get dirty. And also, I don't like having too much sun exposure.
Oh man, like you were definitely not built for the beach then. That was the thing. Like if you'd come in summertime, everyone would be like, oh, come on, let's go down the beach. Hey, like the city beach is crap, but the really good beaches are down the road. You're like,
I mean, if I'm good to go to the beach, I will be laying on a towel, like in the shade, probably reading a book or like listening to something.
Yeah,
just
right.
Laying down. Yeah.
You're not grabbing
like if it's very clear water, I might go in, but not past my waist.
No.
Really.
Sharks?
Not really. It's not sharks. It's just I can't swim, and also I get like water anxiety. Like when I don't know how to describe it, but when water gets kind of above my chest, it's not. I don't think it's anxiety, or it might be, but like I feel things constricting in my chest. Like I feel like I can't, like I'll start hyperventilating, like I can't really breathe that well. Yeah, sometimes I can go in a pool. Like if I really get into it, I don't know, we're going a lot about me swimming, but like I can do it, but not in the ocean. It's going to be harder. And it always takes like a transition process. And
yeah, right.
Yeah. Like the last time I probably went in a pool was 2-3 years ago.
Yeah. Because if you go into like a good beach in Australia, it'll be a surf beach as well. So it'll be like, and all of a sudden I'm bobbing along, and then like here comes a huge wave, and all right, woo, here goes the wave. And like you just be like, oh man, these conditions are changing way too quick for me.
Stuff of my nightmares.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, luckily I didn't say, hey, do you want to go record a podcast in the ocean?
What
do you reckon about that? So you've just been holidaying around in Melbourne, having a sweet old time in the winter time, and I was kind of aware of who you were and your podcast, but we hadn't really interacted much online before. We certainly didn't follow each other online, but then our sort of friend Andy Campbell, who we both knew, well, I know in real life, and you hadn't met in person, because you were just like, hey man, any Star Wars peeps out here? Like, I won't get in the ocean, but I'll happily meet up with a bunch of rando Star Wars people from Melbourne. And you just threw it out there, and away we went.
I know. All credit to Andy Campbell for organizing that. It was so painless for me.
He's just like delegated. Yeah, well, he just had a baby, so maybe he was desperate to get out of the house. So
yeah. Plus, like me going here, it would have been a process of like, what is a good place to do things? It seemed like he immediately knew, locations, obviously.
Yeah. So that was quite cool. So there was a few people that I knew there, and a few people I didn't know as well, and then just sort of, sitting out talking Star Wars, trying to keep warm. But it was good. Like, is that like, is it like something you normally do when you get to a new city? Like, just throw out the Star Wars bat signal looking for buddies?
I mean, I don't really travel that much. I haven't traveled much in the pandemic at all. Like I certainly haven't taken like I'm here because I have family here.
Mm.
It's not like a random trip at all. Um, but I just also knew that I knew that there were lots of Melbourne people. I mean, Star Wars people here through Andy, of course, and
Yeah.
of course Steele, whom
Yeah.
I saw on a separate occasion, and Dan Golding, who I also saw separately. But there's a lot of people. There's a lot of Star Wars people here.
Yeah, we're pretty well represented. Like, it's kind of weird because we've kind of got our crew of people we know. A lot of us met originally because we were fans of Steele's podcast, and he'd sort of have things on when he lived here, and we sort of met people. And there was always kind of like people who would come and go, and then a constant people who were always there. Yeah, we kind of turn up to everything. So that was sort of some of the people you met the other night, Catherine as well, and Andy, and there's sort of a wider group of people, but. Yeah, it's weird because I went to the Kenobi finale at IMAX a couple of weeks ago.
I heard about that.
Which was great. And there was a whole bunch of Star Wars fans, I assume, because they were all there and things. So it's a bit of a sleeping giant, Melbourne, I think, when it comes. Because we always talk about, like, when we were at Celebration going, wouldn't it be great if they did Celebration in Australia? We're like, nah, it's too far. They don't have the fans. Nobody will turn up. I'm like,
Oh, it's not. It's the... So I, in my career as a violinist, I have done a lot of touring around the world, and I've never been on I've been on a tour that's gone to, Europe, of course, all over North America, Canada, whatever, Asia, but I've never personally been on a tour that bothered to go to Australia, because, well, this is a kind of a tangent, but like say like in a major pop tour, it's mostly like ground travel that you are dealing with. So like if we're touring the US, we maybe, we live on a van basically, like we live on a tour bus, and the whole show might be 10 tour buses because you have all the different personnel involved. Yeah, so we travel with, we travel like in a line basically of like 10 tour buses, like 23 like big rigs or whatever trucks that carry the stage, the lighting, the pyrotechnics, like, literally assembling a stage. You assemble a stage in all these different arenas. And so it makes more sense to tour in cities where you can have like everything is an overnight trip or only a few hours away, because you can do a lot of stops in a short amount of time. The problem with Australia, I mean, not that people shouldn't tour there, but just the reason people don't tour there as much is because you go there and then it's like the distance to travel is so far from city to city. It's not like, New York, Chicago, Philadelphia.
Yeah. And there's only 5 cities as well. So you've got to come all this way and hit 5 cities that are all miles apart. Yeah. Yeah.
And then go by bus to all of them. Like it would take forever. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we still get big acts and things. Obviously, post-pandemic has been trickier, and there've been some stuff that's come out. They're all sort of starting to make their way back here again. But it's always been a thing ever since, I was a teenager, waiting for bands to come out and do stuff, and and eventually they would come out and things. But it was always an absolute mission to get here, and people would only ever come once. I think Madonna's only ever been in Australia twice in her entire career.
Really?
It took her 30 years. She came in the early 90s and didn't come back until maybe just before the pandemic. It's really weird, but then there's some artists that have huge audiences in Australia, and they'll come back. They'll make the effort to come back every time because they know that they sell out. Like, really bizarre one is Pink. Like, Pink. She has the record for the most consecutive shows at Melbourne's arena. Like she did like 25 nights in a row or something insane there. So it's this really weird thing where it's like she's got an audience, so she'll come back every time because she can just like camp in Melbourne and play the arena.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense if you're doing a lot of shows.
Yeah, and otherwise it's just like you said, it's not viable for it to do that. But look, I'd love for a Star Wars celebration to come, but every time, like I've been to 2 now, and you just look at the logistics of the whole thing, and even as far as like, even just like getting, like, Ewan McGregor's not getting on a plane to come all the way to Australia for Star Wars Celebration. I mean, I know he was the king of Star Wars Celebration in Anaheim, but he probably just got on his motorbike and came down the road from his pad in LA and, hung out for a couple of days.
You never know unless he's getting a big paycheck. I don't know.
I think he was getting a big paycheck, but we didn't cross paths in Anaheim, obviously, but you were there, weren't you?
I was, just for one day.
Oh, okay. Which day did you go down?
Thursday, because I had bought my ticket before the pandemic, 2009, 20, whatever, 2019,
Yeah.
2020, I don't know, whatever, right? Basically, I bought the ticket, and then, of course, Celebration was canceled or, postponed. So my ticket just held over until 2022.
Mm-hmm.
But when I had first, can you still hear me? I have an alert that says like lost connection to the server.
No, I can hear you. You're all good.
Okay, good. Okay. So I should just ignore that alert. Okay. So when I first got the ticket, all the passes were sold out. So all I could get was a 1-day ticket.
Yeah, right.
So when when they were like, you have the choice to get your ticket refunded or to hold it over for when Celebration happens again, I chose to save the ticket. But I had asked them, like, can I convert my 1-day ticket into a 4-day pass? And they said no. Or like they weren't sure or something. So it just became too, like, I had to just keep my 1-day ticket, and it's so expensive to like buy individual days.
Yeah. Well, I know there was people trying to offload their 4-day tickets towards the end, like through the reselling thing. And some people were just like, just give me something for it. I just want something. Like I don't have anything for it. But
once you haven't planned for it and you've already
well, that's the thing. Like you've already made your life around the other thing. It's always hard. And
exactly.
I mean, that sort of happened with the London one where it sold out so quickly, and people have just gone, oh well, they'll all turn up on the reseller thing. But it's like, well. You can't exactly like last minute to London.
Exactly.
It's not like just popping down the road or something.
Yep.
I mean, for us, it's like an absolute mission. Like it's kind of I was talking about this on the podcast a week or two ago because we were talking about, well, we're kind of committing to go to London, but a lot of the Americans, aren't going because it's too far. But I think the mentality is that this is like a big trip. We treat it like any other big holiday, like the planning and the mentality of doing it. Whereas I think for a lot of American celebrations, like, well, I just pop down for the weekend. It's like a weekend thing. I can take, I just take the weekend off and go.
It is and isn't, because when it was like in Chicago, that is a big trip. If people live in the location of Celebration, then yeah, like I just kind of popped down to Anaheim for sure because it's pretty close to Los Angeles. But I had never gone to Celebration before because before that it was in Chicago, which is a very, it's a big trip.
Yeah.
So I guess within the States, that still is like a pretty big barrier for a lot of people. But still, I take your point, which is like, it's not really, it's a whole extra level to be an Australian person traveling. You have no choice but to travel everywhere.
But everywhere's
for me,
fast,
at least there's a hope that like, it'll come to the West Coast at some point.
Oh, look, I'm sure it'll come back again. Like, did you get through, like, because that was the first day, did you kind of finish your first day and go like, oh, I really would have liked to have come back to this tomorrow if possible? Or you're like, oh, I've seen enough.
I think I was very, very tired after the first day. Like, I don't know how I could have survived 4 days, to be honest. So I'm glad that I only went 1 day. Also, I was very nervous about getting COVID.
Yep.
And so you got lucky, but I heard so many stories of people who went for all 4 days getting COVID.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Stacks of people did. And the funny thing was that we had friends who did get COVID or found out they had COVID when they got home, but it was actually really weird because in most cases it was like everybody in the same house. Like we were all in, like the three of us who were in one house, we didn't get it. And even though we hung out with everybody the whole time, it was all the people who were just in that one house together all got it. And some
that
people
makes
were in the
sense.
house. Yeah, which sort of makes sense, which is kind of interesting because it means it wasn't maybe not even necessarily like on the floor or something where it happened. But
no, it probably was on the floor, but whoever
then,
had it on the floor.
Yeah,
it was easiest to spread to the most people that you spend
time with. Yeah, they were like
with.
passing a coffee cup around or something and all drinking out of it or something. Who knows? That's probably not what actually happened. But we were just glad because, it wasn't that long ago that you'd have to do hotel quarantining and stuff coming back into Australia and all sorts of stuff. And that was a no-go. Like if there'd been any kind of risk of quarantining coming back from Australia, I just wouldn't have gone because you can't really take a week off from your family and then say, all right, now I'm going to be in hotel quarantine for 2 more weeks and be away for 3 weeks. That's just not going to happen. So, I'm glad that didn't eventuate. Yeah. But I'm looking forward to going to London as well. Like I used to live in London, so I'm really excited to go back. I haven't been back since I moved away. So, and that was like nearly, what was that? 2013 I left. So
Oh, nice.
I'm hoping that everything's still the same. I've gone back to stay. I've got a place in the same area where I lived as well. So I'm hoping it's all relatively the same.
Were you raised there? Like, how long did you live there?
No. I moved there when I was 26, 25, 26.
Okay, so that's why you have an Australian accent.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I was there till I was about, I'm giving away my age here, till about I was about 33. So yeah, about eight or 9 years I was there. 9 years.
Oh, you were there for quite a bit, yeah.
Yeah. So it was a proper thing. Yeah, the accent, I did have a bit of an accent by the time I came back, but it was told it was a bit Kylie Minogue, because Kylie Minogue famously was an Australian star but lived in England, so she had this really kind of faux mix of an accent. So
my mom has a mix of Australian and American.
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah. And people are very confused by it.
I love a good mixed accent, but it's funny. But I'll still find myself. I'll still pronounce things British sometimes weirdly, just like say vitamin or something, like just kind of strangely. But I've been back for so long now that it doesn't really sort of, it doesn't kick in too much, which is good. But yeah, I'm really excited to go back. So the convention center is on the side of town where I lived, at least as far as like geographically. It's not like right next to it, but it's sort of, it'll be fine to get around. So.
What side of town is that?
It's on the east side. So I'm going to a place called Hackney, which is like a borough on the east side. So it's not far from where they had the Olympic site in 2012 as well.
Oh, okay.
And then the XL Centre is sort of to the right of that sort of past Canary Wharf, which is it's an area of London where they redeveloped. There used to be old docklands and stuff, and they redid it all and put all the big structures out there.
Is that by Camden?
No, it's much further right. Camden's slightly northeast.
Okay.
But,
I see.
Yeah, Camden's quite cool.
Mm-hmm.
Camden's not that far. Yeah. So your podcast, like Star Wars podcast for smart people, it's because I was going to have you on, and I was like, I better listen and check in and listen to it, and it's just like, oh my goodness, it's like so well thought out, and there's so much research, and it's sort of like, and it's so like, oh my god, this, like, I've just had people on bullshitting and stuff like that, but like when you started it, was it sort of like, did you go like, I feel like I'm filling a gap, or this is just what I like to talk about, or how did it all sort of come about?
It felt, we'll put it this way, like when I started it, everyone around me was like, what took you so long to do this exact concept? And so my podcast is called Star Wars Music Minute, and the primary focus of the podcast is to go through each of the Star Wars films 5 minutes at a time, breaking down the music and sound design. And the movies by minute format was probably pioneered by Star Wars Minute podcast.
Yeah, that's all. I was going to bring that. I'm like, there's always the risk where it's like, there's some brand confusion here. Or am I going to differentiate myself enough?
Oh no, there's an intentional connection with them, because they started it, and they were actually the podcast that got me into the Star Wars podcast world. Oh, cool. So I've been a longtime listener of that podcast, and I've been a guest on that podcast many, many times. So I already was like, I think that's how Andy knew me actually first. Yep. And so I would always go on that show, which breaks down Star Wars movies 1 minute at a time, but it's 5 episodes per week. So it's 5 minutes per week, if that makes sense. Yep. So I just kind of condensed it to one episode, but all 5 minutes at a time. And so, I would often throw in like musical tidbits, and it seemed like, I don't know, listeners of the show were often just like, oh, we would love to hear like more about the music. And like, I kind of got that feedback for a few years, but, I don't know. I thought surely it's Star Wars. Like, obviously there's got to be like tons of podcasts about this already. Like, yeah. Sure. Like, it didn't seem like there would even be a gap to fill. Like, I didn't think there probably would be even a gap. But enough people kept like really encouraging me to start, I guess, basically like a spin-off podcast, or like just something where I can expand, past just the week that I'm a guest on that show once a year, where I could do more than just those 5 episodes per year on their show. And when they announced, or I guess last year when they dropped their season, when they start their new seasons, they do it unannounced basically. So everyone's always like, when is their new season going to start? And so they started their new season, which last season, it was The Last Jedi that they're on. And at that point, it was Monday. They had just dropped the first episode. And I thought, wow, this is like, if anything, we're during the pandemic, I lost some of my music work, I was like, if any time I was going to do this, like, what if I started this? I could start this right now, Star Wars Music Minute, and I could start with The Last Jedi, and I could have an episode out by the end of the week, so I could be caught up. Like, so if I catch them now, then we can be synced.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why my first season was The Last Jedi, because I wanted to be synced with them so that people could listen to the Star Wars Minute, minutes 1 through 5, and then listen, at the end of the week to Star Wars Music Minute, which covers the same part of the film, but from the musical perspective. Yep. And now some people are very aware of that connection, because a lot of people who listen to my show know me through Star Wars Minute first. But then it's funny because some people, obviously come to my show from completely other, means, just wanting to be interested just because of their interest in the music.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't know what Star Wars Minute is at all. And so either, the show is not like necessarily, I don't listen to their episodes before I record mine, because obviously we're in production at the same time. So our podcasts aren't out enough for me to, so it's not like I'm not reacting to anything they say really, but I'm aware of them and we are synced up so that, I don't know, I think it's more fun that way, because, it doesn't matter for those who don't know, but for those who do know, it's like a little extra tidbit.
You're like the Frasier of Star Wars podcasts. You're like the spin-off.
I don't know that reference.
Oh,
okay.
So like Frasier, the show Frasier was like a spin-off of Cheers. So Cheers, the show, was like sort of a famous sitcom, and Frasier was like one of the characters in Cheers. And then he went off and had his own show. So you are, there you go.
I guess I am the Frasier.
I'm showing my age. I'm thinking, what's like a newer thing now that kids would get?
Better Call Saul from Breaking Bad.
Well, there you go. Yeah, exactly. You're the Better Call Saul of podcasts.
Great.
Yes. All right. I've nailed that reference. Look, I thought it was too much of a coincidence, and I didn't do the research. So I'm like, well, I'm doing the research because I'm having you on the podcast.
You're like,
I don't need to.
Kind of awkward that they almost have the same name.
No, it was funny because it's like, like I've got the world's dumbest name, which is Star Wars spelled out, and it was only because I was doing some video stuff for fun for Steel, and that's how we sort of became friends originally, because he needed some help with some video stuff, and I had a multimedia background. And then I was doing stuff that was specifically for stuff of his podcast, because I didn't, and every now and then I would have an idea for like a silly video. I'm like, well, he doesn't want to do that because that's a dumb idea. And I would just sort of park these dumb ideas. The whole idea of like sort of having sort of almost like a Star Wars Explained thing like that Molly and Alex do, but purposely just get facts wrong just to see if anybody would notice and get irritated on YouTube. If you're just like putting a theory in that is completely wrong just because you think, because if it's on YouTube, people will believe it. And it was just a dumb thing. It was like 4 or 5 videos, and then I just kind of stopped doing it. That was why it was Star Wars spelt out, and it was a play on Star Wars Explained. And I know Molly and Alex, and they've been, I've told them that, and they think it's quite funny. But and then I just was like, I thought I'd do a podcast, because I was that whole thing of like, wouldn't it be nice to be invited onto a podcast? And just like, well, that's dumb. Why don't I just like start a podcast rather than waiting to be invited to something, and then you get invited onto a podcast anyway.
That's the way.
But so I'd like check the name and things like that. Like I didn't actually, I wasn't like I called it Star Wars Explained or something like that. I didn't have the actual name in it enough to feel like I need to ask permission. But I've got friends who had like my friends, the Bad Motivators podcast, about a year or two ago. There was like these guys. Some other Star Wars channel was like, oh, we've decided that we're no longer something anymore. Now we're called Bad Motivators. And people were like, you do know that there's like another Bad Motivators podcast out there already. Like you only have to Google, it's pretty easy to check. And I think they reached out. I think like the guys reached out. I think they were quite cool and they changed it. But it's a minefield out there, Star Wars podcast. You've got to be careful.
Well, I like that. I like your name, Star Wars spelled out. One thing that strikes me about it is it feels very Australian, because like when you like, for example, my mom is here on this trip with me because, it's a family trip. And so I showed her my beanie, my fancy
Oh yeah, yeah.
Star Wars spelt out beanie. And she's like super jealous of it. And I was like, she's like, what does it stand for? And I'm like, Star Wars spelt out. And as I said that, like, she immediately, like, I don't know, I could tell she liked the name. And in my childhood, I grew up in the States, but my mom's, raised in Australia. Her whole family's here. She would often say she would say that word spelt, which is not something people in the States say spelt.
Yeah.
We don't
like I'm spelling it out for you.
Yeah, we don't or at least I just would always kind of make fun of my mom or just notice, and wouldn't make fun of her, but just notice that she would always add a T to the end of certain things that were just now I'm coming to realize that other people in Australia do that too. Mm-hmm. And so when I found out that this is the name of your podcast, it made me realize, okay, my mom's not just doing a random thing. This is an Australian thing.
Yeah, the joke was how, because Star Wars Explained, Molly and Alex are just oh, we're just explaining, we're helping you out. Whereas the whole idea was because I'm purposely doing something where I'm peddling misinformation, but I'm trying to make it sound like you're being told how to think. I'm spelling it out for you. Come on, idiot. Don't you understand? Do I have to spell this out to you, you fool, sort of thing? Even though it's ridiculous because I don't talk down to the audience and I hate people who talk down Star Wars to other people. But the whole, I think, it was supposed to just be a parody of a nice way of doing thing, and it was almost like an idiotic way to do it without being mean-spirited. But I like you said, it's like an Australian sense of humor thing, which is really weird.
Well, so here's another wrinkle in this, which you may already know, but Star Wars Explained's original name was Star Wars Minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I had Molly on, and I might have mentioned that because I was talking about the name, and she's just we we had to frantically go back and change and stuff. Well, the other podcast I do, which you do know, is the Peppa Pig podcast as well.
Yes.
And believe it or not, there aren't any other Peppa Pig podcasts in the world, so we don't really have that problem. So anytime anybody catches wind that I do a Peppa Pig podcast, they're like, how do I find your podcast? I'm like, literally just Google Peppa Pig podcast. Is the only one there. There is nobody else who's been dumb enough to start it.
You're the number one Peppa Pig podcast.
That's right. So if they ever do Peppa Pig celebration and we don't get on the podcast stage, something's going on.
Oh gosh, sacrilegious.
That would
be just unfair. Yeah.
Have you seen Thor: Love and Thunder? Do you go for the Marvel movies? Are you a Marvel person? No interest. No. I'm just curious because obviously Taika Waititi is directing this next Star Wars movie, and this Love and Thunder movie has divided people. So people think it's...
I'm always interested in something that is divisive because that's the reason I watched the Wonder Woman movies, is because I just wanted to be part of the conversation. I wanted to be part... Oh, actually, the first reason I watched it is because I was on Wonder Woman podcast. So first, that's why I watched it first, was to talk about the podcast. But that reason I watched Wonder Woman 2 was because I just had to know because the opinions of it were just so all over the place. I just had to know what I would think. And so if I were to dip into Marvel movies, it would be for that reason. But since I'm also not very entrenched in the Marvel world, I also know that I would be missing context. So, so that's why I haven't, I'm intrigued knowing that this movie has been, divisive.
You could just probably pick up. You could watch it and go, all right, I get it. He's Thor. All right, he's doing stuff, and so on. So I mean, Taika Waititi's got a very specific style, and he's quite irreverent and he's pretty kooky and pretty funny, and he likes to sort of make fun of things a little bit. And I think in the last one that he did, he pushed that to a point, but kept it still a Marvel movie, and people kind of liked the irreverence and thought it was quite funny. Thor's loosened up a little bit. There's jokes and stuff like now, and I think
did he write it too?
He wrote this one. I don't know if he wrote the last one. So I think that's sort of part of the thing. So I think what's happened this time, he's been... are you familiar with the Tim Burton Batman movies at all? Like Batman Returns,
yes,
Batman...
because I was on podcasts for both of those.
Oh, this is awesome. You just did...
I also had to
learn... What a way to learn old-ass movies. The famous story with that is 89 Batman was a huge hit. And Tim Burton was the director and stuff and blah, 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 blah. And then they were like, okay, well, Tim, you've made a great big hit. If you want to do another Batman movie, you can basically do what you like carte blanche, go crazy. And like Tim Burton being Tim Burton was like, right, time to Tim Burton this up and let's get wackadoo and let's like do some crazy stuff and let's get macabre in places and let's do all of that, which is, why that movie, some people think it's amazing, some people don't like it. And, they had to famously pull the Happy Meal toys because they had the movie was kind of grotesque in places as well for some, much for kiddies and things. So I think that there's kind of a bit of this where they've gone like, hey, Taika, like Thor Ragnarok, big hit, everybody loved it, more of the same, please do what you like. Here's a blank check, go crazy. And he's just gone, right, well, I'm going to make a silly romantic comedy now with like screaming goats and rock and roll soundtrack and all this kind of stuff. And some people now are just like, what the hell is this?
The rock and roll soundtrack doesn't seem that unusual for Marvel, though.
No. Well, it's kind of like, yeah, it's true, actually. Maybe that's not the wackiest thing in there. But, now it's divided people because it's like, yeah, he's gone too far. He's making fun of it. He's not taking it seriously or whatever. Or just in general, this movie sucks and I don't like it. I quite enjoyed it. I like the silliness and all that kind of stuff. But the point being is that it's supposed to be doing Star Wars next. People are a bit like, oh, is he just going to make fun of it? Is he going to make fun of Star Wars? Like, are we prepared to go too wacky on their Star Wars? I mean, even when he was sort of announced as director, I was a bit like, well, if you're going to hire Taika Waititi, you've got to let the eagle soar. Like, what's the point? Like, Star Wars is notorious for sacking directors or reshooting stuff and trying to fit it into a box of what Star Wars is. Like, do you want to, like, would you like to see something that's completely out of the box? So you kind of like, Star Wars has got to be a certain way and a certain tone for me to enjoy it.
So I am always careful to actually I don't know, what am I trying to say? I'm very careful about like what I think I want versus what I like, because I can say what I think I would like, but it kind of, until I see it, I don't really know. And, I feel like, Star Wars fans are so used to being like, it should be like this. It should be like this. No, I would like it like this. But it's also like, I know what it's like to see, I don't know, if you see like a movie or like a piece of art that you just couldn't have predicted, that just is not something you probably would have signed up for at first. But, if I'm all for like letting the kind of artist present their vision. So that's the kind of thing like I like the most. And so while I perhaps wouldn't, I don't think I would like a funny make fun of Star Wars, but maybe I would if it were done. Maybe I would. I just would have to see it.
Like if they do it well, it's always the caveat, isn't it? Yeah,
but I can't write it off before I see it. Just like on surface level, I don't think I would like it, but I'm basing that off of how I know that other Star Wars have gone and how playing it safe Star Wars has been in the past decade, and in my opinion. And so, yeah, I kind of would like to see that. But the thing is, I just don't believe that would happen. Like, I think I'm cynical of Star Wars's, or, the franchises at this moment, willingness to let directors or let writers or let people really run with their passions and do something that's very unique. Because I think that is, Rian Johnson is the one that people, think is the one that went the most off the rails. And probably since then, everything's been safer.
Yep.
And so I'll believe it when I see it. I don't know if it could happen, but like, I'll believe it I certainly hope. Like, for one thing that I don't like is it concerns me when, like, for example, the Patty Jenkins thing, like, is that movie happening? Is it not? Is Rogue Squadron happening? Is it not? Is it shelved? Whatever. Like, in my mind, like, I don't need a Rogue Squadron movie if there's not a director and a team that is burning with desire to make a Rogue Squadron movie. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would, if someone steps up and is like, I would love to make a Rogue Squadron movie. Like, I've had this inspiration, since I was in film school. Like, I've just been burning to like do something, then I would like to do that. But just playing this game with like Patty Jenkins seems like she would be a good director. So yeah, she'll be the person to like kind of assigning people, like giving people these big movies as assignments in a shirt. It's not that
Yep.
like people can't take, it's not like people can't make really inspired work when it's assigned to them, but there's something like, I don't know, just the
There's so many like
corporateness of it is just, I don't
yeah.
know.
But it's got so many set it's historically got so many set parameters of what a Star Wars thing has to have. And like you said, like
Mm-hmm.
playing it safe and like even the TV stuff still fits into that
It's
box
so
of,
safe.
of just like, well, this is what it is. And that's the whole idea of like, oh, if you get someone like Taika Waititi, and that doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, it just means it's going to be silly. Like, he did one of the episodes of The Mandalorian. It was completely felt like it was Star Wars, and there was a few little gags in there as well, but it was still very Star Warsy. And I think that just off the back of this Thor movie, where it's like he's not making fun of it, like as in going like this is dumb and you're dumb for liking it. It's more just like, oh, this is just. It's essentially like a quippy romantic comedy. This thing with some fighting in it. So, does that still count? And like Star Wars as well. It's I don't know. Like it's weird now because like, we've been so few. Like it's been a few years since we've had movies now. And like I remember like having to wait years and years and years for movies. I just don't think it's got the pressure. I just don't think there's as much pressure on movies as there used to be for stuff. Just because we've got so much content now. Like if one doesn't land, it's like like I know we sort of when we caught up the other night, and I know, like Rise of Skywalker came up, and I was kind of like dismissive of it and things. And I actually don't mind it that much. I just don't like it as much as the others. But it doesn't really like. I didn't like it as much. But there's been like 3 Star Wars TV shows since then. There's going to be more movies. It's not like we're waiting 15 years for stuff now, and that's the thing you got to live with anymore. Like if it doesn't quite land for everybody, we can just move on to the next thing. It's not like we're in this world of like continuous churn cycle of more stuff anyway.
Yeah. My friends do not agree with me on this. So, but I am someone that would rather wait. I would rather wait a couple years between each Star Wars and have it be really like, I don't know, really saying something.
Yeah.
Like as much as I read all the Star Wars books, I will watch everything. I will certainly consume everything as it comes out for sure. But I don't need, like, I kind of like aching. I like aching for the next thing. Like I like being excited for the next thing. Nothing will ever compare to the excitement felt waiting 3 years, 2 years for the next film, and then just like how excited you are to like see this one installment that you're going to get for the next few years. Whether seeing The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi or whatever, any of the films that came out. It's just I just feel a sense of like it's something bigger. Rather, it's like I don't feel the same way with the TV shows, really. Like, oh yeah, it's another one. Oh yeah, I kind of start taking it for granted. Like, oh yeah, there's a new Star Wars, and there'll be another one. Oh yeah, there's plenty. Yeah, there's tons.
Well, it was definitely elevated. Like Kenobi was definitely elevated because we got to see it at Celebration in like a big room, and
For sure.
it was like that. It was like that fan experience because it felt like when we went to like opening night, and they would do the midnight screenings here in Australia, and we would see it on like Wednesday midnight, and you go see it, and we'd all go down to the thing and do the thing at midnight, and then even the IMAX finale a few weeks ago for the Kenobi fight, it was like, wow, this feels like a proper Star Wars night out. Like everyone's here excited to see what's going to happen. I know it was the finale.
Yeah, that was a really fun night.
It was still. Were you there?
At Kenobi?
Yeah.
Premiere.
Oh, the one at Celebration? Yep. Oh, you were in the big room, weren't you? Yeah.
Not the finale, but
yep.
I was in the big room.
Yeah.
That's right.
Just not a bad effort. Like one day at Celebration, you just rock in for the one day and you get the.
I know.
You got the panel, and then you got the finale as well. Like no wonder you're exhausted by the end. Like it'd be like this every time. So who's your favorite Star Wars character? Like who's your go-to person?
Anakin.
Anakin's your
Anakin,
favorite.
Darth Vader. Mm-hmm.
Anakin and Darth Vader, or Anakin?
Anakin / Vader.
Nice.
Both.
Do you reckon? Like just trying to tie it back to your world, like any musical ability in there? You reckon? You think Anakin could if you gave him some time with a violin, he'd be able to like chuck it up and get something out of it? Do you reckon? Or
I think anybody can.
Really? Patience? Mm-hmm. Sure, I don't know if I could.
It's not necessarily patience unless you want to like practice and study it. But I feel like playing music is very seriously. There are many parallels between playing music, training to be a musician, and using the Force, training to be a Jedi. In so many of, like basically anytime I hear about, Force teachings or of the training that Jedi go through and sort of the sacrifices made and the care you take for your instrument, and just the different ways you have to hone your skill, practice with others, meditate, like all the ways that Jedi sort of have to train to become what they are, reminds me greatly of training to become like a professional musician, especially the fact that like the Force is something that what flows through everyone, right? The Force touches everyone, not just Jedi, no one's immune from like the Force affecting them. So similar with musical abilities, it's like, it's not like only musicians are touched with this like ability to hear and make music. Everyone has at least a touch of like either enjoying music or like being able to sing a little bit, or just like it's in everyone's life. It's part of the fabric of everyone's life, just like the Force is, right? But that doesn't mean, and which is why on my show, Star Wars Music Minute, I don't only talk to musicians. Like I talk to people who are also not musicians, because, people who aren't trained also have like their own unique sort of connection with music and way of describing it that's different from the way musicians might. But with the Force, it's like, sure, a lot of people might be Force sensitive to varying degrees. The Force touches everyone, but not everyone necessarily has to like make the sacrifices necessary to actually focus on, I'm going to really become a master at wielding the Force. And as someone who plays music, and that's been my life, is like music is my life and has always been my life. For me, that's something that resonates with me deeply with regard to like Jedi, because as a musician, I know that everyone, I'm not unique in the fact that I can enjoy and appreciate and even analyze music, but I have also devoted a lot to it. And so I don't know, that was a very long-winded way of answering your question, but I think, yeah, sure. I think Vader could play. I think Anakin could play music, but
what's the equivalent of going to the dark side? What's the equivalent of going to the dark side though as a musician? Is that like smashing your shit at the end, or
That would depend on like the school that you go to, or like that would really depend. Some teachers thought that I have gone to the dark side at times. Yeah, like I think like I went to like an art school, and I went to the same school as Tim Burton. Different years though, but
different, yeah, probably. Tim Burton would have known what Frasier was, I reckon, if I had asked him. So
But yeah, my school, the dark side would have been like selling out. Like honestly, the dark side would be like getting a job with Disney, or would be like, well, for the dance department, I know the dark side was getting a job with Disney. Like the dance program wasn't allowed to do like Disney or pop or like commercial jobs while they were in school. And for me, when I took a year off school to do a big pop tour, that was also kind of looked down upon by some people. So that was the dark side to some people.
What about doing a Star Wars podcast now? Do some of your hardcore musician friends go like, oh man, like, come on. Like
well, Star Wars? Two of my friends, well, yeah, some people, yeah, Star Wars music does have that effect a little bit, because I don't know, some people aren't aware of this, but like in the hardcore classical music world, film music is seen as pop music, basically.
Yep.
And so
like a mass consumed sort of thing.
Yeah. Like sort of like a watered down version of classical music. And so there is a little bit of, I don't want to, it's not ire, certainly. And especially like, it is a little bit like seen as a little less serious. However, a couple people that I knew from music school, James Waterman and Justin Scheid, they have been frequent collaborators on Star Wars Music Minute, and they've both been guests. And on my YouTube channel, when the shows come out, we often do live stream commentary on the shows. So like the Bad Batch, Visions.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's
it's cool for some, and
it's bad for some, and
it just sounds like any other music. It's just like,
it's like with any nerd thing though. Like,
oh yeah,
some people will be like, gosh.
It's like when young people discovering Kate Bush through Stranger Things, or like Metallica in Stranger Things, because Metallica featured in the last episode of Stranger Things, and that Master of Puppets from the mid '80s. Because people are like, oh my god, what is this? And then people are like, come on, man, like it's like, dude, you should be happy that people are finding stuff that you like. It's just such a weird, like I always find that really strange. I always get excited when people like the thing that you like or get into the thing that you like. And I know like something like Star Wars is so common, it's not really unique in things, but you know, you'd be surprised. Like if I, you know, when my kids take an interest in Star Wars and stuff, you know, it's exciting because you know you want to encourage them, but you don't want to encourage them. So you've kind of got to step back and kind of go, you know, if you want to, you know, if you want to watch something, we could watch it. You know, they like Ray. You know, that's you know, Ray's
let
been
them
great.
Think it's their idea.
Yeah, exactly. And Ray's very big at our house, and she was sort of the perfect conduit for a couple of young girls to get interested into Star Wars, which is good. But yeah, that's really curious that how Star Wars is perceived amongst like proper musicians. I just did air quotes. Air quotes.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's quite a bit of judgment, and you know, the classical music world, pockets of it are very elitist and very, it's a lot. It's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. Well, you know, like don't stop being you. Don't stop doing the podcast or anything like that.
I can't.
So, what are you looking for? You go for it.
I was going to say, like, increasingly there's, you know, a bit of increasing amount of scholarship surrounding at least John Williams music, which that has been one area of Star Wars music that has been gaining in probably not popularity, respect amongst musicians or, you know, musicologists and whatnot. Like I think of Frank Lehman, who put together the complete catalog of the musical themes of Star Wars. He's a film musicologist and John Williams scholar, and there are a lot of people doing really in sort of there's a lot happening around John Williams in particular, but of course not just with Star Wars. Just John Williams is sort of an anomaly in like the film world today. So
yeah,
this is a topic of endless analysis.
Yeah, it was sort of funny. I mean, you were, like you said, you were in that Lucasfilm panel on that first day, so like, you know, John Williams came out and thinking it was really, really great, but at the same time I was a bit like, oh god, he's 90, like are they like, do they know something that we don't know? Are they like sort of pre-habituating this poor guy, and like they're just not letting him stop working and stuff? He's just like still going like, here we go again, like just sort of putting him up there. Come on, John. It's like, I just want to have a lie down. Like I'm 90, but he seemed to be pretty with it and all happening. I mean,
he's the one who asked to do the Kenobi theme. So.
Yeah, well, that's good. I mean, you know, check in with him first, absolutely. So what are you looking forward to next? Like in Star Wars, it's kind of weird. We've got this sort of thing of like, well, you know, there's some movies that are going to come at some stage, so get ready. And there's some TV stuff. Like, are you sort of down for Andor? Are you ready for some Andor action?
Yeah, I'm ready for Andor. I'm down. I'm excited for Andor, especially, of course, new composer. So of course, I'm interested in what the music will be like, and I'm surprised I'm surprised by how excited I am for Andor, because Rogue One, I just thought I was fine with it. Like I thought it was, you know, I think it's a good movie, but like I didn't like love it. Like for me, Solo and Rogue One are sort of at the end of the Disney Star Wars movies for me, which I know some people, Rogue One is like absolute favorite, at least of the Disney installments. So I didn't really feel that strongly connected to Rogue One when I saw it. But the accessory materials surrounding Rogue One have strengthened my connection with the movie, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So like I read the novelization, and that actually like filled in some things like that made me believe the movie more, the novelization. And just seeing the Andor trailer at Star Wars Celebration, that also made me feel more connected to Rogue One for some reason. And I think this show will actually strengthen my connection to Rogue One. And I say that in contrast to things like I grew up with the prequels, and I love the prequels. I love the Star Wars prequels. If you ask me right now, what do you want to put on for fun? I would say Attack of the Clones for sure.
Yeah.
And I think the prequel, like I have already spent my whole life immersed in the prequels. You know, Anakin's my favorite character. For me, Vader for me was never a scary character, because since I was young, I just know Vader as Anakin inside.
Yep.
That's Anakin. Yeah, yeah.
Did you go into the prequels just before? Sorry, before you go on, did you see the prequels having seen your like new Darth Vader? Like you kind of knew that was Darth Vader, or did you go in going?
No, I did. Yeah. Because I had seen my first. Yeah. I had seen. I mean, I was into Star Wars from a very young age, and so my first Star Wars actually was Return of the Jedi, and we had them all on video or whatever, and I guess the first one I saw was the one where Anakin gets redeemed. So
like, it all works out all right at the end. I'll be cool with this.
But I just don't remember not knowing about Star Wars because he's just. Star Wars and images like Vader and Yoda are just so everywhere that it's kind of hard to pinpoint the moment I learned about Vader. I just always knew vaguely, Vader is this thing that looks like this, and like Yoda is like that one, and
it's
Vader
really fascinating because there's like a whole phenomenon, like on YouTube of like 20-year-olds reacting to old movies or movies and stuff like that, and they'll go occasionally the thing will pop up and I'll watch it, and they'll watch like Attack of the Clones, or they'll watch Phantom Menace and go through and just be like, oh my god, is this what happens to this guy? Like he catches fire, like what? Like this is like where he ends up. This is like quite a which is sort of the way it was designed to be watched originally, is that you start at the start and go through. But it's that sort of, you kind of wondered like, I wonder if wouldn't it be nice to just forget everything and then just watch it all kind of run. I mean, like you could run from a 1 to 9 now. Do you think it kind of still serves to go like the?
Yeah, and I've tried machete order. I've tried episode order, and I think a release order is absolutely the way to go because I think, and I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want I think having the relationships and the fate of Anakin already known. I don't think that I don't think that ruins any dramatic tension. I think knowledge of the inevitable fate strengthens the prequels. I think it's actually important to know that this happens to him. I think it's important to have that in the back of your mind while watching all the prequels. They came out in that order. So they're made with, people, I don't know. It's narrative doesn't always work when it's chronological. Chronological isn't always best, right?
Yeah, and we're at this stage now where they're just plugging, so many more holes now. And now you're going you've got this 5.5 hours of Kenobi that plops right in the middle now. It's to the newcomers and things do you go, all right, well you go here, then now you've got to go to here to Kenobi before you get to here, and then you've got to go over here, and you've got to detour and go down to Mandalorian before you can get to the the sequels. Right,
and I simply don't think. And I don't think going in order, especially with the shows, makes sense. I still think release order. I would still say watch all the films in release order, and then the shows in release order, because because the Star Wars universe expands along the Earth timeline. If that makes sense. So the gaps being filled are not even relevant. If you watch them, I don't know. Do you kind of know what I mean?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just the questions haven't been created yet. So why would you even care about a show if you? Yeah. So going back to Andor, though, the reason I'm excited about Andor, deepening my connection with Rogue One, is because I love the prequels, and something that I hear all the time is the Clone Wars series. You've seen all the Clone Wars, right? Yeah. So people will say that the Clone Wars series really is what made them feel more attached to the prequels.
Yep.
And for me, that's not the case at all.
Yep.
For me, I didn't need any help feeling attached to the prequels, because I already have been so attached to the prequels that I've already had this whole, I don't know, headcanons everywhere. I've already thought about it very deeply. And before Disney Star Wars, I was always that kid in school who was just wanted to, talk about what I think about Anakin, how I care about Anakin is how what I think these relationships are just when you have time away from new Star Wars content coming out, I guess you have a lot of time to think about what you think about all these things and kind of come up with your own theories and whatnot. And so for me, that world was already very rich. The space between episode 3 and Vader, in episode 4, etc. Just I would just marinate on that and be like, oh my gosh, this whole time, like, oh my God, they're the same person. And oh my God, all this this is so tragic. Oh my gosh. Like I could be Vader if I were in the wrong circumstance, whatever. And so the Clone Wars to me it didn't strengthen those at all. So, it's not as exciting for me when I have accessory materials to something that I already love. So I feel like Andor will actually be more helpful to me as a fan.
Just something like Kenobi, because like, did you feel a stronger connection that because it is like a conduit, it is a closer conduit to the two things, and like you said, you were a prequels kid, and sort of, you're coming into the original trilogy. Like, did that hit harder for you because you said you've stewed on that time in there as well? You're like, or you more like, oh, I actually thought that's probably not what I would have thought or would have done, or you just kind of along for the ride?
I don't think canon-wise, I don't think anything that happened in the Obi-Wan show was like expressly like, oh my gosh, that's not what I was imagining. But I don't think the Kenobi show, which I enjoyed, I don't think the Kenobi show strengthened my connection to existing Star Wars. Yep. I just don't. I think I already had and I think this is maybe like, it's going to sound like I'm just like a Disney hater, which I'm not, but like, I think one of the more annoying things with the Disney shows and maybe movies is this perceived need to like plug holes where there's not, gaps don't all need to be filled. Like, I think just this need to just fill in gaps everywhere.
Yep.
And I don't think that's filling in gaps doesn't necessarily strengthen my bond with things. Like, it doesn't bother, like, I think humans can accept gaps in the things that they love, right? Like, I don't think people are just like, oh God, I hate this because there's a gap and I don't know what happened in between. Like, I just don't think that's been a thing that Star Wars fans have been like super plagued by. In fact, they've been fueled by it creatively for decades, right? Well, and so I liked Kenobi, but I didn't need it. And we didn't need it. No one needed it. Like, it didn't, I needed it because I love Ewan McGregor and I love, I needed it. Like, I wanted it. I wanted it as a fan. It was like the most anticipated thing, but like, I already loved, like, I don't think my love for the prequels or originals could go high. It's already top tier,
Yeah. I mean, they've sort of snookered themselves a little bit on this insistence of refusing to move forward from episode 9, because effectively, in the world, like at the end of episode 9, maybe there's like the holiday special thing, which probably doesn't count as far as like, well, time has effectively stopped at that point at the end, like, of Rey on the desert looking over the twin suns with BB-8. So whether she, when she gets in the Falcon and flies away or whatever she does, like we're effectively at that point in time of what happens in Star Wars. So they're just like, well, we're unwilling to commit to anything past that point, whether it be for whatever reason, whether it's actors or whether it's story or whether we want to pick it up later on or whatever it is. So they're just like, well, we have no choice but to go back, basically. So we're just going to like live in the past and, like you said, plug those gaps and stuff like that. I'd love to go forward. Like I'm ready to roll, but I guess it's that thing of like, if you do, when do you do it, and do you shoot yourself in the foot when you decide you want to do it, and do you negate other stuff? If he turns around, they go, oh, Daisy Ridley wants to do it, but Oscar Isaac and John Boyega don't. But if we push there with Daisy Ridley, do we completely have to write those guys out, and then we've committed to not being them because we can't backtrack or whatever we do? But I don't know. We're rounding the end here. We're almost at the end. It's just flown past.
I know, it really
we're both
has.
on Melbourne time. It's like, oh, it's getting close to dinner time. Well, not close to, well, for me, because I've got little children, it's getting close to dinner time. But it's just been so cool to like make a new Star Wars friend, really. I've just, we got to hang out, last week, and then we ran into each other at the Sunday market. I didn't even ask you if you got anything at the Sunday market at Camberwell Market.
Oh, I got this flannel that I'm wearing.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Goes well
I got
with the beanie.
Flannels. Thank you. And
you would have got a good deal because you got at the end of the day when everyone's just trying to get rid of their shit too. That's the best time to go.
Oh yeah, and then I got like 4 things from this like bin where they're like $1 each, and I was like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. I got some Pokemon cards.
Oh, did you
Pokemon
really?
stickers. Yeah.
Oh, my daughter would have loved you. She loves Pokemon. There you go.
Oh yeah, I got some. Yeah, yeah. It was a good day, and I'm excited. I'm coming back to Melbourne in September.
Oh, awesome. Well, it'll be spring, like the sun will be out. It'll be football finals time. It'll be lovely days. So hopefully we can have another catch up and we'll get you back on the podcast. Yeah. But tell everybody about where they can find you and all your stuff and listen to your podcast, please.
My podcast is on all the podcasting platforms as well as YouTube, and you can find it at Star Wars Music Minute. And on social media, on TikTok and Instagram and other places, it's at Star Wars Music Minute. On Twitter, it's at Star Wars Musemin. And then my personal handle, I tweet from both, just kind of without regard sometimes, just whichever one I'm signed into.
Whichever one I'm logged into, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. That's at Chrysanthe Tan, just my name. Yeah.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, that's it. Thanks, everybody, for listening, as always, for writing nice things, sending messages, all that kind of stuff. I never asked to leave a review. Leave a review on iTunes if people do that. I should probably do that up front.
And say this is your favorite episode.
So this is your favorite episode. We'll get you back. Even if it's not, we'll get you back anyway because I like talking to you anyway. So I don't. Who cares?
Job security.
We'll defy the protesters anyway.
Oh God.
I wouldn't worry about that. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. We'll see you soon.
Yeah. Bye.